The sandhills of central and western Nebraska are a unique ecosystem. Nearly 20,000 acres of gently rolling grasslands rest on sandy soil. Underneath runs the Ogallala Aquifer, a massive body of fresh water that touches 8 states. In some parts of the sandhills, the aquifer is so high that it bubbles to the surface. Like the sandhills, the residents of Nebraska are unique as well. An independent and proud people, they are protective of their way of life. This sentiment is reflected in a statement inscribed above the doors of their state capitol building. The salvation of the state is the watchfulness of the citizen. But watchful citizens don't always agree. A recent point of contention is a proposed pipeline that would carry oil through the sandhills and over the Ogallala Aquifer. While some see this pipeline as an opportunity for prosperity, others fear disaster. TransCanada is a multinational energy infrastructure company. In 2008, they built a pipeline connecting the tar sands oil fields of Alberta, Canada, with refineries in Texas. Now, they want to build an extension that would cross most of the Great Plains states, including portions of Nebraska's sandhills that run over the Ogallala Aquifer. Of the states the extension will cross, only Nebraska has opposed the project.
The issues around the XL pipeline are not political, they're geographical. At legislative hearings in the fall, not one Nebraska citizen spoke in favor of the pipeline.
Historian John Carter understands what's at the heart of Nebraskan values. He studies how those ideas came to be and how modern Nebraskans express them. It goes back to how Nebraskans interpret the fundamental principles of America's political and economic systems.
We've got an odd system in America that's served us pretty well, but it's an odd system. We've got a government based on committee and an economy based on greed. And you need the two of them put together to actually work well. Nebraska has always been a state of radical agrarianism. And populism really was in the middle of that. That you had all of these now very independent ranchers and farmers who were not very smitten with what was going on as America was urbanizing. And so what populism emerges from is a political answer to industrial capitalism, big business, big industry.
The most prominent Nebraskan populist is William Jennings Bryan. A 3-time presidential candidate and powerful speaker, Bryan was a fierce advocate for the common man, gaining him the nickname the Great Commoner.
The folks that are out there, people that I meet, and I spend a lot of time running around the state talking to folks, they tend to be people who really like their control local, and they really don't like being told what to do.
As debate over the pipeline intensified, many have weighed in on the issue, including progressive organizer Jane Kleb.
Thank you, Mary, and welcome to everybody. I'm so happy to see the room filled. We were a little bit concerned scheduling it on a Saturday morning that, we'd be here talking to ourselves, but clearly that's not the case. And on this issue, Nebraskans continue to kind of outdo any expectations that I have or any of the other issues that I've worked on in the past. My name's Jane Kleb, and I run a group here called Bold Nebraska. During the healthcare fight, we were called Change That Works. So we, have morphed into a new organization that really tries to be a hub for action and news. We're going to focus today on kind of going through the nuts and bolts on what it takes to write a letter to the editor, as well as having everybody, before you leave, write a letter to Secretary Clinton. Write the letters and you can either leave it on the table when you're finished.
Bold, Nebraska has found success organizing people to resist the Trans-Canada Pipeline. Mary Pfeiffer is one concerned citizen who has joined with Bold, Nebraska in hopes of reaching others in her community.
There's a lot of material, including everything from T-shirts, bumper stickers, action kits, Sierra Club materials, and so on, that you can take with you when you go. Jane mentioned the letters. One thing I want to mention is everybody in this room can have a party or a church auction or an educational event in their community or library or small town, because this is an area that if we can tell people about it, they will be on our side. There's no reason not to be on our side. All we need to do is take responsibility to deliver information.
But populists in Nebraska do not always find themselves on the same side of every debate. While people like Jane and Mary normally support organized labor, the pipeline is one issue that they disagree on.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ron Kaminsky, and I am a proud member of Labor's Local 1140.
Ron Kaminsky is the business manager at Laborers Local 1140, based in Omaha. He is a regular visitor at the state capitol in Lincoln, where he seeks to advance the interests of his union by speaking at committee hearings and meeting with legislators in the unicameral.
I am a native Nebraskan, that's correct. Born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska, and proud to be a Nebraskan. Labor's Local 1140's position on the pipeline is we are in support of the pipeline. Our local union worked with Trans-Canada to construct the first Keystone pipeline that was completed in 2009. It was a great relationship. I don't want it to sound like there's no possibility ever of a leak, but you have to look at the safeguards, first of all, that are put in place. You have to understand how pipelines work, how pump stations work, how the detection works. Just to say that there is a possibility of a leak, and if it leaks, the whole aquifer is going to be tainted with oil and we're going to be drinking oil water. It's pretty far-fetched, especially when you look at the amount of pipelines that already run through the aquifer, not only here in the state of Nebraska, but in other states. There are tons of pipelines that run through the aquifer, and to make this sound or appear like this is the first ever pipeline through the aquifer, it is total baloney. So.
She and I had tea at the White House a couple times while she was in office. She liked me really well because I wrote Reviving Ophelia. I'll tell you something you might want to film.
I'm a clinical psychologist and writer. I'm 63 years old. My great-grandparents homesteaded in Nebraska, and my husband's great-grandparents homesteaded in Nebraska, and my grandchildren all live in Nebraska. So there's 7 generations of us. 3 of my grandchildren live less than 10 miles from the proposed pipeline. They live along the Platte, and they drink well water. And so it's very important to me that my own grandchildren aren't poisoned by some kind of toxic water.
Normally, Ron and Mary would be political allies, but the unique interests involved place them on opposite sides of the pipeline issue. However, both are fighting the same fight, resisting powerful outside forces trying to influence the pipeline issue here in Nebraska.
But I would have to think personally that a lot of what happened with the Gulf has to do with this. Also, the amount of money that is being put into the state of Nebraska to fight this. I think that they believe that the best place for this fight would be in Nebraska. So lots of money is being funded in Nebraska to try to kill this pipeline. And then you have also residents from Nebraska that are contributing large amounts of money to fight this pipeline. And I think that's why you see such a big fight here in the state of Nebraska.
Well, I think there's two reasons. One is the Ogallala Aquifer and the sandhills, the particular unique environment in our state. The other reason, and this is really a more important one, I think, is so people got organized. You know, lots of things don't happen in this culture because nobody appoints themselves responsible and says, this is my fight and I'm going to work on it.
I do believe that there are groups in the state of Nebraska that use fear factor to try to get this pipeline stopped.
I was heartened. Today in the paper, there was an article they were delaying it. And one of my favorite lines from this old psychiatrist who used to supervise me was, delay is the deadliest form of denial. And as long as we can keep delaying it, I regard that as good news.
Though both sides are passionate about their cause, their positions are not without some nuance.
It could be better for the state if it was moved to the east a bit, but I don't think that that should kill the project, like I said. I think that with the pipeline, you're going to have your concerns, but even if the route is moved, it's still going to be running through the aquifer, just maybe not in the state of Nebraska. And the existing pipeline did touch edges of the aquifer already, so I don't know what the big difference would be.
The smallest victory, but I would still call it a victory, would be we get some regulations in place and reroute the pipeline to a safer part of our state. And that we have better safety standards, better inspection standards, and some kind of big account that says if there's any problems with this pipeline, TransCanada's already deposited the money we need to keep our state clean and safe.
Bryan was uncompromising in his defense of the common man, but in 3 tries he never did reach the White House. Modern populists in Nebraska have learned that a little bit of compromise can go a long way.
Let me go back to my original point. If we've got a government based on committee and an economy based on greed, that weird mix of voices at some point coalesces one way or another. And the only way we ever figure out whether those voices were the right voices, were they the folks that absolutely should have driven us, is when we see how things work out.